Alrighty, welcome to today's A Legally Speaking podcast, a LinkedIn Live, where I'm delighted to be joined once again by another fantastic guest. And let's get into the fact that the legal industry is under a lot of pressure at the moment. Fast turnaround times, tighter budgets, more complexity than ever. Enter the world, of course, of AI. But as these tools are getting smarter, the stakes are obviously getting higher. And so today, I've got a wonderful guest joining me to explore, can AI move fast, stay ethical, and still serve the people behind the practice of law? So joining me is the wonderful Austin, a former lawyer, founder, and the mind behind David AI, the verified privacy-forward assistant that quietly is transforming how solo attorneys and small law firms and indeed students handle research, drafting, and discovery. So welcome to the show, Austin.
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on today. So I want to go start a bit about your journey from sort of litigator to legal tech knowledgeist. So what moment or problem first pushed you towards building an AI-powered tool like David?
Okay. So I had done sort of startups before law school. I'd worked in corporate technology. I was at Amazon's headquarters. So by the time I went to law school, I was sort of primed to, I thought I was done with startups. I thought I was done building.
Yeah.
But I was writing about sort of before law school and then in early law school, I was writing about like intellectual property problems and other kinds of problems with ChatGPT 2, which most people didn't really know about at the time.
Yeah.
And then ChatGPT 3 came out. Of course, there was like that fall where it really exploded. And that's where I was looking around and thinking like, this tool is useful, right? But there's a lot of things that lawyers would need for this to actually work for us. So it's going to need sort of compliancy stuff. It's going to need better features. It's going to need X, Y, Z. So I started building when I was in law school with one of my buddies and just kept going ever since.
And the rest, as I say, is history. You've been outspoken that David AI is an AI with a conscience. So what are the real world consequences when tools aren't built with that ethical foundation?
Sure. Well, I think that sometimes it's regulatory compliance, right? There's founders, particularly in the U.S. context, who are coming and trying to build legal tech products. They see LLMs are good with words. They think, what are professions where there's lots of words and lots of money to break into or siphon off of? So they come to legal. And, they don't think about I really think about regulatory and compliance concerns, but they don't think about the other obligations that lawyers, litigators, attorneys have with respect to our clients. So I think that's a big one. There's some other components too about just AI is hot and people are trying to put it into places where it probably doesn't make the most sense, either in terms of tool capabilities or user experience or a whole host of things. So AI becomes a band-aid when you need like sutures and stitches. It's just the wrong tool for the job. So our team's really focused. We use and design AI when it's necessary for a task to enable things that software couldn't do before. But there are tons of places where we do traditional hard computer science problems that aren't AI or ML.
Love it. Okay, and I guess one of the things that is promised, I think, and understand, is speed, but you focus on verification. So, how does your sort of engine work, if you like, and how does this shift the trust equation in legal AI specifically?
Yeah. So we created what we call our provenance engine. So provenance chases the chain of authority, usually, historically between something like art, but data provenance also matters. And that's really what we focus on. So if our AI is doing something for you, it is always showing the underlying sources that it pulled from, sentence level, representation. So we will pull a document and sort of find the exact sentence that the AI used, often synthesizing from multiple sources. But we do that in every piece of our workflow. So if it's writing for you, it's showing its sources. If it's making you a timeline of events, you can click any event in that timeline. And again, it's showing. Because our thought is that these tools are useful in that they're fast, but lawyers are putting their names on these materials as they file them with their clients in courts. And so we want to have high confidence that they're correct and investigate them when we're not sure if they're correct or not.
Yeah, no, and I love that you go through that level of scrutiny. You're gaining quite a bit of traction when it comes to solo attorneys, small law firms. Why did you design for this audience, perhaps instead of chasing the big law from day one rather?
Sure, sure. Well, I think if I'm being truthful, we explored the idea of going after big law.
Yeah,
But like, listen, I worked for a small boutique firm. I worked for a transnational corporation. I saw the disparities in terms of like tool access, administrative support, the sort of apparatus or environment that supports lawyers on their work, right? Like when you're in a small shop, there's like a couple paralegals at most, maybe one or two associates. And that's
yeah,
not the same thing as when you're, in-house or with a legal department, right? And there was enough folks building for Big Law. Again, sort of skilled builders and first-time founders chasing a dream. But in the U.S. context, over 70% of lawyers are in a firm of 6 or fewer attorneys. So the vast majority of the legal segment is these smalls and solos. On top of that, like I was in a place that had not very many like big law shops. And so I was just seeing a lot of people around me, real life lawyers I was meeting who didn't know anything about AI. They didn't have these admin folks to support their education or transition or try the products. They didn't have an IT, like in-house IT person, let alone a whole department. And so I was like, how do we build a tool that's easy, cost effective, and that these folks could just kind of open up and start using and gain benefit from, because they're the primary drivers in their community who would benefit the most from it.
yeah. No, I love that, and again, the fact that you'd come from that sort of background as well, and you probably know a lot of the pain points, and can see it from both sides as well, is very helpful. You've recently introduced a Boolean query generator that simplifies complex research. So, what's the broader mission behind making legal research plain English friendly?
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple things. One is just like some lawyers just don't like to make booleans, right? It's not how their brain works.
Yeah,
That is certainly, a more computer sciencey way of doing search, right? And we're trained to do it in law school, but it's only because that's what the existing tools were well designed for. There are computer science reasons why that form of search is a strong form to do search. And so that's why we didn't want to just replace it and say like, oh, well, you just ask the AI and it'll magically pull it, right? Like it turns out, again, for computer science, for engineering reasons, is probably not what we want to be doing. So we thought, okay, how do we preserve query searching, Boolean query searching, but make it less painful for folks? And the answer is, what if we made Google Translate, except instead of translating between languages, you give it a natural query and it just gives you your Booleans right there.
love it, love it. And yeah, I mean, another thing we should dive deep into is data security, because how do you maintain that while offering such powerful generative tools? And what are the industry myths about AI privacy you'd like to debunk as concisely as possible? Because I know this is a bit of a minefield.
Oh man, yeah. How many hours do we have? My super fast answer is you have to start at privacy, like from from the beginning of your product. It's not something you do afterwards when you decide to go get a security credential. Like top down, it has to be a paradigm of your business. We wrote a blog post about this actually. That it's not just engineering, right? It's who has access to the data inside of the company, like under what conditions can engineers look at data, those kinds of questions. And so a lot of tools, again, these sort of like non-lawyer startups.
Yeah.
I'll say it that way. I'm trying to be nice. I got much less friendly opinions, but some unsophisticated folks are like, hey, lawyers will use our tools. We'll use that as a way to train lots of data, and then it'll make our AI better, or we'll then like repurpose the AI and sell that to a new kind of customer, right? And it's like, hey, like if you're an attorney and you don't realize that like your data is being harvested by the AI tool that you're using for purposes, that can risk like attorney-client privilege, that can risk trade secret protections, that can risk a whole collection of things that a lot of everyday users, your AmLaw top 200s, they're gonna know. They're gonna know. Your transnational law firms, they're gonna know to ask. But your
Yeah.
everyday folks, the folks for who Clio serves, or my case, or these smalls and solos, like they don't know to ask these questions. And so That scares me, keeps me up at night.
Yeah, no, and for good reason too. Okay, in your view, what makes legal AI fundamentally different from general use AI, like say ChatGPT, and
Yeah.
what risks come from using general tools and sensitive legal workflows? I know you're touching on some things there.
Yeah. So it's all of the obligations that lawyers have to their clients, and those things vary by jurisdiction. So in the United States, we've got 50 of these to keep track of. Around the world, like it gets even bigger. And so it's I think I named a couple of them. Trade secrets. That's one place where there's questions or considerations about if you, a lawyer, or your client disclose to an AI information, does that obviate trade secret protections? Like, we don't have clear rulings in the United States on it. It hasn't been put to the test, but people are wondering this question. And lawyers have people complain. Like, I hear other startup folks complaining about, oh, it's so hard to build in medical because you have HIPAA. And it's like, well, lawyers have HIPAA and, right? So it's one of the most sort of heavily scrutinized environments to build products in because of all of the obligations that lawyers have, both with respect to individual laws and bar guidance that the tools have to be built for.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum then, because you've spoken about law students using David AI.
Yeah.
So should students be taught with AI tools right from the outset? And what does that say about the future of legal education, in your opinion?
Yeah, so there's some new research coming out, particularly a couple studies this month in June about cognitive offloading, and there seems to be, data that as we give to tasks to AI, either we don't cultivate those skills in the first place, or if we have existing cognitive skills, they might atrophy. I think that's the most concise way to say that, but. One of our board directors is a longtime PhD in computer science with a liberal artsy focus, which is my background, liberal arts. So we spend a lot of time together thinking about what things we have a decision matrix about what things we should build and make available for AI to solve them. And some of the things we think about is like, would it be detrimental if a lot of people in society lost the ability to do this particular skill? Like, if the answer is yes, then perhaps we should not, automate it away. Yeah. Similarly, is it something that is personally valuable to an individual? So, and if that skill atrophied at the individual level for any single person, do we think that would be detrimental to them? And if the answer is yes, then we usually don't build a tool that would do that. So, the kinds of things that we're solving they're high cost, or they're big busy work, those kinds of things. So to answer your question succinctly, yeah, I think law students can learn AI, but we should be with AI, but we should be thoughtful that they're still undergoing the sorts of behaviors that would cause them to learn the necessary things about being a lawyer. Like, filling out a form over and over is not necessary to being a lawyer. We can automate that. But like, is legal research? Yes. Is the way that we do legal research today, using something like Westlaw or Lexis or whatever, is that necessary to preserve? Maybe not.
Yeah. Okay. And so you touched on before regulation, but how do you see regulation evolving around legal AI? Should we wait for standards to be imposed, or can firms self-regulate effectively now?
Yeah. I will flip the question back on you and say, in which context? Because I'm thinking with my American hat on, but are you thinking in a sort of a more global sense?
Yeah, I mean, go from the US perspective, given obviously you'll have a stronger kind of view and an explanation on that.
Sure. Well, I know sort of listeners are all over. So very briefly, the US has a widely heterogeneous regulatory environment, right? Each state gets to set its own laws and rules, and unless that's a whole body of US law. But right now, we keep track of every state-based bar association that's issued guidance on the question, and only about half of them have. So we have about 25 of the 50 states who haven't issued guidance about how lawyers can use this technology at all. And those lawyers are sitting in the dark. We have another 25 that all have different sort of beliefs about where the lines are. I think I think that bars should produce guidance, in part because I talk to lawyers who are afraid. They just don't know what they can and can't do. So they say, I'm
Yeah.
not going to touch this till my bar association tells me what the rules are. And in reverse, we have enthusiastic folks who are using like something like ChatGPT, and they're not really apprised because they're not technologists about the professional risks that just using that tool or any of the foundational, off the shelf consumer grade models um, pros to their practice. And so, they're not aware also because there isn't guidance maybe letting them know about some risks they should consider. Um, but I don't think that it has to be super heavy duty. Like a lot of the existing guidance on like cloud storage generally, I think overlaps with just a few extra flavors for AI specific or LLM specific technology troubles. So in one sense, I'm disappointed that more jurisdictions haven't just like gotten guidance out because I don't think it's super hard. But maybe that's just because I swim in this stuff all day, so I don't see the water.
Yeah, there probably is an element of that, and you're proactive, right? And you're getting out there because you've been helping law firms actually develop their AI use policies and ethical guidance. So, what are the most
That's right.
common blind spots firms have when implementing these tools?
Honestly, I think part of it is just asking the right questions to vendors. Like one of the ones we talked about is like, what happens with my data?
Yeah,
So, some folks know to ask like, where does my data go? In other words, like, where does it live? Does it live, in particular servers that the company has? Does it go into a cloud storage? If so, who? But they're also not thinking about like training. So, and folks, I think I would say maybe the majority of folks have learned to ask like, okay, are you training on my like files or documents? But they're not thinking to ask like, what about prompts? So are you recording like what I ask the AI or tell the AI to do? And there's still risks in there, right? Like if I say, hey, I'm representing plaintiff, company A in a workplace harassment suit, I need you to rewrite this document to be more favorable or, sort of mellow the effects of, some grievance or propose or, allegation that the company is being hit with. Like if that is being captured, moved, and used in other places, then there still might be troubles there. So it's data and data management, it's prompts. So a lot of it is vendor vetting. A whole nother collection is just actually using the tools. So as we've seen, like people know that they should be checking their sources, but they sometimes don't know when the AI is making modifications. So an easy example, I think, was like Anthropic, the AI company. Some of their lawyers got dunked on. Did you see this?
yeah.
Yeah,
Tell our listeners more.
yeah. So they kind of got dunked on because they filed I think it was a motion. They filed a document with the court and it had some improper citations. And everyone's like, you should know better, right? Like you're the counsel for Anthropic, blah blah blah. And but the quieter part was not like they were using sort of like AI for citation creation or legal research, but that they had appropriately found legal sources. And my memory is that they used AI to blue book them, to put them in the right citation structure, and in doing so, they didn't catch that there were sort of changes that got made by the AI. I think another example that people they know to be thoughtful and check, but they'll like draft a whole document, right? Maybe like a 15-page motion, then they'll give it to an AI and say maybe like, make this more concise or help me make it punchier, whatever it is, not expecting it to touch something like citations. And that nonetheless, because it's a probabilistic tool, these things, for engineering reasons aren't perfect, affect something like the citations. They're thinking to themselves, I didn't tell you to mess with the citations. I don't need to go double check them again because I did them the first time and I know they're good. And then nonetheless, they've now been changed. So um, the three big buckets I see are like where firms struggle are vendor vetting, actually using the tools, and then using the tools and verifying or being thoughtful about what the tools are actually doing in ways they might not be expecting.
Yeah, really, really good insights there, and thanks for giving some really sort of practical examples and things that people can relate to and go and research a bit more on as well.
Mhm.
So David AI was also recently showcased at the ABA Tech Show. So what did you learn from engaging directly with the broader legal community there?
Sure. So that was last year's show in 2024. We I mean, for me, it was just like recognition that, we could be at that point, we were a two-person duo. I was still in law school. Like we
Yeah,
were, and that we could build product that looked like some of the other folks, right? That could look like um, big name, technology vendors that you've heard of or have, raised so much money or gotten so many customers around the world, whatever it is, right? That little two-person duo could build something that's punchy. Um, and I think that also speaks to the state of just technology entrepreneurship right now. Like there are so few barriers to building products. And for the longest time, lawyers were used to being served bad products. Like
yep,
we have people who have looked at our product and there's so many things we want to do to make it feel better, look better, perform better. And so I'm like, yeah, I don't know, it's like 40% of the way to like what my dream is. And people are looking at this being like, this looks so nice, like I don't care about the functions, just like I'm used to like tools that have been around since like Windows XP and they look like it, like.
yep.
And lawyers are just accustomed to like these bad user interfaces and ugly designs and clunky buttons and just like the profession deserves better.
Yeah. No, agreed. And I've spoken to many CEOs of top sort of legal tech businesses, and they've said exactly that. That
Yeah.
the legal industry deserves better, and thankfully now it is getting better, which is good. Another topic I want to talk about is mental health because it's something you speak openly about, especially the pressures of legal work. So, how can AI be a tool for well-being rather than burnout?
Yeah. I mean, we talk to folks for who sometimes the value, the reason they're coming to us is because they, want to cut back on non-billable time
Yeah,
and they just want more billable time. They use our AI to only reduce non-billable tasks rather than billable tasks. Um, and they're doing stuff with that non-billable time, either that they're getting back, right? Either they're going on vacation, they're taking on more clients, so they're making more money, so they feel more confident with their financial stability of their law firm. But other times it's like they don't have to work on the weekends anymore, or they can go home to their family at night at a reasonable hour and kiss their kids goodbye or good night before bed, right? Like,
yeah,
and most of all, when I think about smalls and solos, and part of why we moved into that market segment, smalls and solos spend more time than mid-size or large-size law firms doing non-billable work. So they are losing more time in the day to administrative, or they're doing billable work, but it's taking them a length that they're writing down. They're writing off their bills. So they're
yeah.
still not function. It's billable, but they're still not making revenue for the firm. And so those are all the places where I'm like, let's get AI to make these kinds of professionals work better and be well, because they're the vast majority of our lawyers in the U.S. and they're the folks who need it.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, we absolutely want to do whatever we can. We always talk a little about legal tech for good. And that's only going
Mhm.
to be a good thing if it can give people more time to have personal time or downtime or whatever it may be. Okay, so
Yep.
legal tech startups often pivot very fast. I'm involved in a few myself, but you've stayed pretty focused. So what has
Yeah.
guided your sort of product philosophy and especially in the face of a very fast moving AI race?
Yeah. I mean, part of it was where we started, right? Like we built a large sort of technical apparatus to do what we needed. And now we found that we can deploy it in new ways. So we started just being like, hey, lawyers want to be able to make use of their own law firm documents in the way that they would with ChatGPT. But the two problems is one, they don't want to give those things to ChatGPT, and two, they're going to want to see their own sources. So something like Perplexity, but sort of
Yep.
for your own files. And that's where we started. But the underlying technology that we needed to solve that problem is, again, deployable in lots of different workflows that lawyers use. So I think, we got kind of lucky with where we started. Our original vision for the company was something that was a little more client facing. So in that way, we have pivoted a couple times.
Yeah. Part of the
I
journey.
think, yeah, yeah. I think the other thing to add to that story is uh, that we we the problems that we solved were not just like a sort of representational, right? Like show you these files or something, but it's like we built our own parsing engine. So the ability to take in documents, right, ingest them, and ours like outperforms Google's model on legal documents, particularly legal documents over 25 pages, by like 30%. It's over 10 times faster. And so these are the things that enables us to like, kind of get deeper into this space rather than move into another space.
Yeah. And, my listeners will be sick of me talking about it, but specific is terrific. The more specific you can be, more focused, then, absolutely the more successful you'll probably be. Okay. What's one underestimated use case of David AI that's blown away when hearing how it's used in the field?
Um, David can take in any kind of document. So not just like judicial opinions or statutory authorities, right? You can take in email exchanges, medical records, financial records, websites converted into PDFs. Like if it's a textual document, like we can handle it. And so people use it for all kinds of things. Sometimes they use it for like document review or discovery. Sometimes um, somebody somebody told me that they were using it just to like rewrite angry emails. Like they would just like be so mad at opposing counsel and they just like write it all out. Like, how dare you? Like blah, blah, blah. Dump it all in there and then say like, hey, David, like rewrite this and make it professional.
Yeah.
and so they could feel the catharsis of getting all those feelings out, but nonetheless like send something that was professionally appropriate.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's, I think, the fun part, right? Smalls and solos work, the kinds of law they work in and the way they work is all widely different. And so for us, we had to build a really abstracted or generalized product to service all of these different needs and workflows. But nonetheless, it means that I hear all these stories that I'm just like, oh, I never thought to do that.
Yeah, and I guess no 2 days the same. And this has been a fascinating discussion, as I knew it was going to be. So before we wrap up, just a final one. If every law student and managing partner in the world saw one message from you today, what would you say?
That's so tough. I wish I'd prepared something on it.
That's the authentic off the fly answer.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think the practice of laws is rapidly changing. I don't think that large law firms will. I think that some firms will find themselves as frogs in boiling soup, right? Like they either won't use AI or they'll use it only sparingly. And I really don't believe that like all lawyers must use AI. I truly don't believe that personally, but I do think that the practice is changing around us. So consumers of legal services are expecting lawyers to work faster. They're expecting AI to reduce the lawyer's billable time or time on tasks, not increase it. And so sort of consumer expectations around legal services are changing, whether or not you elect to use these products. Large corporations are pulling more things in-house because their in-house teams are better able to manage their legal needs because of their own use of AI, which might leave less legal demand for outside law firms or corporate counsel of counsel. So there's a whole sort of environment that's changing that sort of large law firms are probably apprised of, but students might not be. And so it's dynamic, and in changing times, the folks who win are the folks who are adaptive and fast, and that's advice for everyone.
Yeah, no, exactly. Success means speed. I've loved this. So this has been an absolute masterclass in how AI can serve legal professionals without compromising its core values. And I love that we've cut across a number of different topics. So to everyone watching, if you care about legal tech that's practical, principled, people-centered, you need to be following this conversation. You need to be reaching out to Austin. And Austin, if folks want to learn more about you, where can they go to connect with you? Feel free to share any social media handles, any websites. We'll also share them with this episode for you too.
Yeah. I mean, my name, Austin Brittenham. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm generally pretty communicative on there. If you head over to our website, secondchair.ai, so the number 2 ndchair.ai, there's ways to get in touch with us, our contact box, our email, so on and so forth. And we're a highly communicative company. It's part of what we thrive on. So yeah. And we also have a whole collection of blog posts. Much of what I've talked about here, we've got a blog post or two on. So these are curious topic areas for folks to explore, those are some places you could go.
Fantastic. Well, it just leaves me to say thanks ever so much once again, Austin, for joining us on the Legally Speaking podcast, sponsored by Clear. But from now, from all of us, over and out.
Thanks.